Hi everyone, this is Chris. I'm a photographer based in Singapore, and as an existing owner of a Nikon Z50, I was looking at the release of the Nikon Zfc with great interest. So what happened was that I just bought the Nikon Z50 recently, and this is just what I think of the release as an existing owner. The Nikon Zfc was inspired by a film camera, as you can see. So if you look at the design of the cameras side by side, all right, you will notice that the ZFC looks pretty good, I must say. It looks like a film camera that I actually have a Nikon FE, which is a pretty old film camera in itself, and it looks kind of like that actually. So as you can see from the front, immediately something that strikes me is the function buttons are missing. So I'm wondering, so this must be the lens mount button, and I'm just wondering where the functions button went. Personally, when I use my Z50 for work or for my casual wildlife photography, I do use the function buttons. I usually set the function 1 here for switching the image size. So instead of the full DX in the Z50, I might even crop in a little bit by default, so as to get more range, and I don't have to crop in later in post-processing. And from the top, you can immediately see more differences, especially with the lack of this mode dial on the right side. The mode dial to me personally is quite important, especially for work, because when I'm shooting events, I actually will set two different custom settings in U1 and U2. So within U1, I will usually set it as something without flash, indoors, and for U2 I will set it to flash settings indoors again. And it doesn't seem like there's such a function here. I'm hoping that with the ZFC they bring in the pro grade memory bank system. It used to be, I used to use it in the Nikon D3 and D800, but nowadays I've been using the U1 U2 function, especially together also with my Z6, which I also have as my main camera. But something that is interesting here is they have made it extremely manual, in the sense that you have this mode switch on the left side. So you have the MASP, manual aperture shutter priority and program mode, and finally full auto. No doubt there will be some people who are fresh into the Nikon system, or they are fresh photographers, or rather should I say a fresh entry into the photography world, right? And they may be using the auto mode. So hey, no problem is there, why not use it, right, for those beginners. And another thing is without the top plate LCD, while there's a mini one here which apparently only shows the aperture settings, better than nothing for sure, but yeah, I thought it was quite an interesting design choice. Definitely it will be the situation where you can, with one look at the top plate of the ZFC, you will be able to see all your settings, hopefully at a glance. Okay, something that unfortunately you couldn't do with the Z50. But I did appreciate the fact that the Z50 has this dedicated dial for photo and video mode, which I believe they replicated for the ZFC as well here. Okay, the only thing I thought missing was perhaps a threaded shutter button. Would be kind of nice, since they are going for all the the retro aesthetic here anyway. But hey, maybe it was an additional cost, and we wouldn't want the cost to go up because of that, right? So looking at the rear view, to me this is something that makes a real big difference. So a few things here. The controls are spread out on the right side and the top left side. Compared to the Z50, sorry. Compared to the Z50, all the controls are on the right side, and you actually have some touchscreen controls here. Personally, I am not a fan of having touchscreen controls. Why? I'm not being a dinosaur here, but I'm thinking from it from a practical point of view. Imagine you are shooting in winter and you are wearing thick gloves. There will be no physical buttons for you to press. You will likely have to buy gloves which have that touchscreen functionality. There are such gloves, just that that's something that you have to consider rather than having a full button and a proper button for you to press, and you can actually may even be able to feel it with your gloves on. As Photography Live here, they have mentioned another thing that they mentioned here is the grip itself. Regarding the Z50 grip, personally, I think despite having this nice contoured grip with this part where your thumb can rest, I still feel that because the camera itself is not that big, it is a little cramped for me. And to be honest, my hands are not that big in the first place. I would say maybe I have medium-sized hands or even on the small side, and sometimes my hands already cramp up from trying to reach the shutter button and the back dial, because I personally like the back dial autofocus system rather than binding my autofocus and shutter release to this button. So I usually focus using the button here and release the shutter here. So already I feel that the grip is a little small. I cannot really comment on the haptics of the ZFC yet since I have not handled it. I might drop by the Nikon Experience Center in Singapore one day to try it out. But I can see there's a little bit of a hump here or curve here for you to rest your thumb there, but not really sure. Ideally it will be something like this. You can actually see something protruding here for you to catch your thumb onto. But one big thing, of course, would be the screen itself. Again, back to the screen. Notice that instead of just a top and down tilting screen, you have a fully articulating screen that flips out on the left side. This, to me, I think is a huge ergonomic improvement. So what happened was I used to use the Nikon D5000 series. It was a 5100 if I'm not wrong. Back then, I really appreciated having a flip out screen so that I can take pictures from multiple angles without having to look at the camera or the back LCD from an awkward position. This is a little bit of an issue for the Z50 when I am trying to shoot with it in portrait orientation using the LCD screen at a low angle or a high angle, especially in bright sunlight. Especially in Singapore, you have pretty harsh tropical sun typically in Singapore, so that was an issue for me, and I thought that having this screen will really help a lot in those situations. For sure, vloggers will love it because you can just hold the camera and you will be able to see yourself in the screen. People might say, hey, why not buy a field monitor? But that's an additional expense, and that is something extra you have to load on top of your camera, making it even heavier, right? So the author here, he mentioned that there is no AF on button or joystick. Well, this is a consumer grade camera, so I'm guessing that Nikon wants to segregate their lines with so those with joysticks or AF on buttons will be the so-called enthusiast or pro grade cameras, while the so-called consumer grade cameras, they will not have this function. Here they mentioned that actually Nikon said an optional grip might be on sale at the end of July when the ZFC begins shipping. Well, let's see what happens then. Alright, currently it's the start of July, so I'm not sure what will happen when the camera is actually shipping. So much for the external parts. One last thing to note was I just noticed this hump here, the fake the fake viewfinder hump. Alright, of course now it is a mirrorless camera, so there is no actual prism inside, but for the sake of nostalgia, they have kept it in the ZFC so that it looks more like a film camera. In the Z50, I believe there's an actual use for it. Why? Because the small tiny flash, inbuilt flash, is actually here, and this flash is missing on the ZFC. So some of you may not care about it, but personally, sometimes for work or simply sometimes when I want to sell something on an internet platform, I may want to use a flash to properly show or shoot the item that I want to sell. And for a quick and dirty job, I will simply just set up two small flashes quickly, two manual flashes, and use this inbuilt flash in manual mode to trigger the two flashes. that saves me a bit of time instead of having to fiddle with one more thing, which is the transmitter. Of course, I can do it, but this is really a quick and simple thing, and just want to get it over with. So that is a little bit of time savings, each time I do it. If let's say I do it 100 times, that will be quite a few hundred seconds saved. So definitely some people may not care, but to me that is something that I feel was useful, that they have now removed with the ZFC, which I felt was a little unfortunate. Yeah, having a small tiny flash is still better than nothing. Yeah, especially when you are able to crank up your ISO even at night. You simply just want to get the shot. The ISO doesn't matter anymore. The small flash might actually suffice at higher ISOs even at night, right, to illuminate your subject. So now on to the specifications. Most commentators and YouTubers on the internet, they have mentioned that the Z50 and the ZFC, they largely share the same internals, which I believe is the case here. From the spec sheet you see here, most of the specifications are similar, except for number one, the built-in flash, which I mentioned already. There's none on the ZFC. You have the shutter speed range. Because the ZFC is actually using this mode dial on the top, it has the function to go up all the way to 900 seconds, for your ultra long exposure. In the Z50, you only go up to 30 seconds. So if you are someone who does a lot of long exposures, this might matter to you. Another thing would be the IAF in wide area mode. Again, this is a little bit of a niche area. The Z50, it doesn't have it in the wide area AF mode, but it does have it in the full auto mode. So it's not as though the Z50 doesn't have an autofocus system. It does. Just that you have more options within the ZFC, simply because it's newer, and I guess Nikon wants to have something new to write about. Yeah, and the autofocus detection range is slightly extended in the ZFC. You can see it here. In total, there's maybe I would say a 0.5 EV difference. You have minus 4.2 to positive 19.3 EV compared to it's 23.5 stops versus 23 stops. Very minimal, but if you need it, it's good. It's better than nothing. Yeah. All right, and the next thing will be IAF in video. Okay, for me, this is something that can be potentially useful, especially if you are a one-man team, and sometimes you might want to take a video of yourself and nobody will be there to pull focus for you. What we can do, of course, is have a deep field of focus, and you can try to just wing it by having that large amount of area in focus, having a small aperture, stop-down aperture. But ideally, if you want to have relatively shallow depth of field with eye autofocus in video, hey, there you have it. It is automated for you. So again, I mentioned something about the articulating LCD, fully articulating, compared to tilt only in the Z50. Some people would definitely appreciate this. All right. For the size, it is slightly smaller, I'm guessing, because the articulating screen doesn't have so much real estate. So, but you might be able to notice the difference, especially if you're quite far away from the camera. But generally, if you're using the screen just to check your framing, your rough framing, this 0.2 inch may or may not bother you so much. All right, and this continuous external power part, okay, I'm guessing it just means that you will be able to use a power bank to power the camera while using it. All right. From my own usage, the Z50 already allows for the use of a power bank to charge the camera. To charge the battery in camera. All right, it works just fine in the Z50, but I have not tried using it while charging. Maybe it doesn't work, but for Z50 now it does. All right. So if you are someone who might want to use a portable power bank as a third-party power option on the go. So instead of packing multiple batteries, you just want to use one battery and one power bank. Hey, there you have it. You can use it on the get-go, or from the get-go. All right. So basically, more or less, that's all the difference there is. This 5 grams difference basically is insignificant. Yeah. And the last thing I would say would be the price difference. There's about $100 difference between the Z50 and the Zfc. So the Z50 naturally is cheaper because it's been out on the market for the past 2 years, coming 2 years now, yes. And body only, okay, apparently the Z50 doesn't come with a body only kit, but I might be wrong, but maybe this may not may be the case here. You can actually buy the ZFC body alone, so that's fine. All right, basically what's the case here? All right, if you are a current user of the Z50, personally I don't really see the need for you to so-called upgrade, or in this case probably side grade, you can think of it that way. There is not much purpose for you having to move to the ZFC unless you really like that retro aspect of the ZFC. Personally I do, but hey, that's an additional expense. All right, and you really need the rear LCD. These are the two things that the ZFC has going for it. Okay, and on the other hand, why would you go for the Z50 now in 2021? So if let's say you are someone like me who occasionally uses the small pop-up flash for whatever reason, okay, to light up your subjects at night, just to have that little bit of field flash, or just to control your manual flashes or manual strobes, hey, this pop-up flash will be useful for you. And of course that $100 savings, brand new, I might add, is nothing to sniff at. Yeah, if you are getting it second hand, I would imagine you can get even more savings. Probably you can get like $200-300 off compared to the current street price, right? So there you have it, a quick look or commentary at the ZFC compared to the Z50 from the perspective of a working photographer and a current Z50 user. I hope that you found this video useful. So this channel focuses a lot on perspectives of a working photographer on a budget. So if you do like this kind of content, please consider subscribing and liking the video. Thank you very much and have a good day ahead.